Vexara Thune, senior xenobiologist of the Kalthari fleet, glared at the human specimen through the containment barrier. Specimen H771, previously designated Harper Oaks before such personalization was deemed inappropriate by command. "You know what's absolutely fantastic about my job?" Vexara asked, tapping her claw against the observation panel. The stunning conversation. Just riveting. The human stared back, those peculiar round eyes blinking with annoying regularity. No response, of course. Not anymore. Protocol P12 was a stroke of genius, Vexara continued, scrolling through vitals on her datapad. Vocal inhibitors surgically implanted in potentially dangerous specimens. No more tedious threats or pleas or... She waved her third appendage dismissively, whatever irritating sounds you humans make. The specimen's heart rate increased slightly. Interesting. Don't get excited. It's not personal. Well, actually it is. Your species has proven problematic. 4 colony ships vanished near your sector before we realized you weren't the primitive mammals our initial scans suggested. By then, you'd already destroyed the Hartak outpost. Rather impressively. I might add. Vexara turned to her assistant, Graz Noor, who hovered nervously by the laboratory entrance. Are you recording this session? Yes, senior researcher. All data streams active. Excellent. Today we begin Intelligence Assessment Phase 2. Vexara approached the barrier, deliberately looming over the much smaller human. I have been studying Earth transmission records. Your species is quite obsessed with communication, aren't you? Always talking, singing, writing. We have theorized it's a neurological dependency. Our models suggest specimen cognitive function will drop approximately 60% within 2 standard cycles without vocal expression. The human's face remained impressively neutral. Not even a twitch. Specimen H771 has been voice-restricted for 26 cycles. Let's see what's left in there. Vexara pressed her access code into the panel. Commence test sequence. The barrier hummed and a section slid open. Graz's breathing apparatus whistled anxiously. Relax, Graz. The specimen is secured appropriately. See the restraint bracelet? One aggressive move, and it receives enough neurotoxin to paralyze a Zoltar beast. Permission to voice concern? Senior researcher? Denied. Your concerns bore me. Vexara entered the containment area, carrying a simple puzzle cube, a standard intelligence assessment tool calibrated for what should be moderate difficulty for the average human. Here's how this works, specimen. Solve the puzzle, you receive nutrient reward. Fail and, well, nothing dramatic. We simply record your cognitive decline. The human, Harper, tilted her head slightly. Her hands were bound before her with flexible restraints, allowing limited mobility. Begin test, Vexara announced, placing the cube between them. What happened next still replays in Vexara's nightmares. Harper looked directly into Vexara's 4 eyes and smiled. Not the friendly gesture humans exchanged among themselves, but something altogether predatory. Then Harper drove her forehead directly into the puzzle cube, smashing it to pieces. What in the void? Vexara stumbled backward, knocking over the nutrient dispenser. Graz, security protocol. But Harper wasn't finished. With remarkable dexterity, she caught a sharp fragment of the cube with her bound hands and, before either Kalthari could react, slashed open her own forearm. She's self-terminating. Graz shrieked, emergency lights bathing the laboratory in pulsing crimson. Blood, bright red, oxygen-rich, sprayed across the transparent barrier. Vexara froze, scientific curiosity momentarily overriding alarm. The human wasn't striking randomly. Her fingers moved with purpose, using her own blood to create. Symbols? Language. Vexara whispered, comprehension dawning. She's writing in her blood. The crimson message gleamed on the barrier. Your mistake. Fascinating adaptation, Vexara murmured, even as security drones swarmed the chamber. Graz, are we recording this? Why, yes, but shouldn't we? Quiet. This changes everything. Harper stood calm amidst the chaos, blood still dripping from her wound. The restraint should have triggered by now, but the human showed no signs of neurotoxin effect. The bracelet, Vexara realized. Check the bracelet. Graz's analysis came too late. Harper had somehow rewired the device, likely during previous observation periods when they thought she was merely fidgeting. Now, as the drones attempted to restrain her, she triggered the bracelet herself, not against her own nervous system, but as an electromagnetic pulse that disabled the laboratory's security measures for precisely 3.8 seconds. Long enough for Harper to leap forward, snatch Vexara's access card, and slam her fist against the emergency release. Containment breach. All personnel evacuate. The automated system blared throughout the facility. Harper stood at the threshold between captivity and freedom, blood-covered and breathing heavily. For a desperate moment, Vexara thought about physically restraining the human herself before remembering the strength differential. Even a small human could break Kalthari bones with minimal effort. "You won't survive the facility," Vexara declared, trying to sound confident. "The atmospheric composition alone will." Harper shook her head and pointed to the environmental controls she'd already adjusted. Then she made a gesture Vexara didn't recognize, extending one middle digit upward before sprinting down the corridor. "Lock down everything." Vexara screamed into her communicator. "Specimen H771 is loose." Commander Trell's voice crackled through the system. "Impossible. The voice restriction surgery prevents cognitive." Well, apparently nobody told her that. Vexara snapped. "She's communicating without vocalizing." She used her own blood to write a message. A moment of silence followed. "Then, what message?" "Your mistake." I believe she was referring to our assumption that removing vocal communication would disable human intelligence. Station alarms blared throughout the facility. The security feed on Vexara's tablet showed chaos erupting across multiple levels. And somehow, during her captivity, Harper had gained access to station schematics. She moved through air circulation systems and maintenance tunnels with disturbing precision. "How is she doing this?" Graz whispered. "She's been in isolation." Vexara's scientific mind raced ahead of her fear. "Observation. She's been watching us, learning our patterns. We thought we were studying her, but..." Senior researcher. A security officer burst into the laboratory. "The human has reached detention level 3. Vexara's heart sank. "The other human specimens." "She's already released 6 of them." Graz made a high-pitched whimper. "We are doomed." "Don't be dramatic," Vexara snarled, though privately she calculated their survival odds plummeting. "Activate the neural disruptors." "We tried. They have been sabotaged, and several weapons from the armory are missing." Now Vexara did feel fear curl through her digestive tract. How many total humans aboard this station? 23 specimens. And now they are armed and loose, she concluded grimly. "Alert the fleet. We need immediate evacuation." Commander Trell himself appeared at the laboratory entrance, flanked by elite guards. "No evacuation. Containment protocols are still in effect. We will not lose this facility because of one species." "Commander, with respect, you don't understand what we are dealing with." Trell's expression hardened. "Enlighten me, senior researcher, since your team's assessment of human capabilities has proven so accurate thus far." Vexara bristled but swallowed her pride. "Humans are extraordinarily adaptable. They communicate through multiple redundant systems. Taking their voices didn't isolate them, it simply forced them to develop alternative methods. And they are social creatures. Now that they are together." "They are still outnumbered 20-1, Trell interrupted. "And this station was designed to withstand attacks from far more advanced species." The lights flickered. "What was that?" Trell demanded. An ensign rushed forward. "Power fluctuations in multiple sectors, Commander. Something's interfering with the main reactor." "Impossible." "The security systems have been compromised," Vexara finished. "Commander, these humans have likely been communicating and planning for months. We just couldn't understand how. Trell's communicator crackled. Commander? We have lost contact with sectors 7 through 12. And there's something strange happening with the atmosphere processors. The realization hit Vexara like a physical blow. They are not trying to escape. They are taking over the station. Preposterous. Trell bellowed. They are test subjects, not military strategists. A new voice spoke from the doorway, one of Trell's own guards, but speaking perfect Kalthari. Actually, Commander, you are wrong about that too. Everyone turned to see the guard remove his helmet, revealing a human face. Not Harper, but another specimen, one Vexara recognized from the records as former Captain Elias Vasquez of Earth Defense Force. How are you speaking our language? Vexara demanded, scientific curiosity momentarily overriding fear. Vasquez smiled. Your translation devices work both ways, Doctor. And you talk a lot during your experiments. Very educational. Commander Trell reached for his weapon, but froze as multiple red targeting dots appeared on his chest. I wouldn't, Vasquez suggested mildly. More humans appeared behind him, all armed with Kalthari weapons. Harper sends her regards, by the way. Brilliant woman. Used sign language to teach us your security protocols right under your surveillance. Sign language? Vexara repeated. Hand gestures. A complete language. Developed by our species centuries ago for those without vocal capability. Vasquez shook his head. You studied our biology but ignored our history. If you'd bothered learning about humans, you'd know taking someone's voice doesn't silence them. It just makes them more creative and usually pretty angry. The lights flickered again, then stabilized. Harper has control of your life support systems now, Vasquez continued conversationally. She was a systems engineer before you abducted her. Your security architecture impressed her, actually. Took her whole 3 weeks to crack it. Vexara's scientific mind couldn't help being impressed despite their dire situation. 3 weeks? Without direct terminal access? She memorized your command sequences by watching your fingers on control panels. Photographic memory. Vasquez tapped his temple. That's how she bypassed her restraint bracelet. Watched the maintenance tech who installed it. Commander Trell seemed to finally grasp their predicament. What do you want? Transportation back to Earth, for starters. Your complete research data on humans. And Vasquez smiled coldly. A few volunteers to explain to our government why you have been abducting our people. Your species attacked us first. Trell protested. Did we? Interesting claim. We look forward to reviewing your evidence. Vexara stepped forward. I will go. As lead researcher, I bear responsibility. Vasquez raised an eyebrow. Noble, Doctor. Harper will be pleased. She specifically requested you. A chill ran down Vexara's spine. Why? Something about continuing your conversations. Apparently, she has much to say. He gestured toward the door. Shall we? Wham! As Vexara was led through her own research facility, now controlled by those she had studied and underestimated, she couldn't help but appreciate the irony. She had silenced Harper Oakes, thinking it would render her helpless. Instead, it had simply changed how she communicated, not with sound, but with action. And her actions had spoken volumes. When they reached the command center, Harper stood at the main console, fingers dancing across controls, orchestrating the station's surrender without uttering a single word. She turned as Vexara entered, and for the first time since her captivity, the human's eyes held something beyond defiance. Satisfaction. Harper gestured to a nearby human who translated, She says your theories about human communication were flawed from the start. We don't need voices to be heard. I see that now, Vexara admitted. A significant miscalculation on my part. Harper made more gestures and the translator continued. She also says your research might benefit from a more participatory approach. Vexara tensed. Meaning? Harper smiled and held up a medical device Vexara recognized with horror, a vocal inhibitor, identical to the one they had used on the humans. "Don't worry," Vasquez said, noticing Vexara's expression. "We are not going to use it. Unlike you, we don't believe in unnecessary cruelty." Harper nodded in agreement, then made one final gesture. "She says you took her voice," the translator interpreted. "So she let her actions speak instead. And she hopes you have learned to listen." Looking into the human's determined eyes, Vexara realized she had indeed learned something profound, not just about humans, but about communication itself. It wasn't contained in vocal cords or written symbols, but in the indomitable will to connect, to be understood. And as the station announced the arrival of Earth vessels responding to the human's distress signal, Vexara understood that the most significant message had been delivered without a single word. Never underestimate a species that finds a way to speak even when silenced. The Earth vessels' retribution and mercy held position around the Kalthari research station like massive, vengeful guardians. Their arrival had transformed the power dynamic instantly. Commander Trell, once the embodiment of Kalthari authority, now stood with his head tilted downward in the universal posture of defeat. Admiral Kira Voss of the Earth Defense Fleet strode through the docking bay with the calculated confidence of someone who had expected to find exactly this scenario. Her uniform bore the scars of previous conflicts, and her eyes, sharp as precision lasers, missed nothing. "Captain Vasquez," she acknowledged with a crisp nod. "Your distress signal indicated a hostage situation. I see you have renegotiated the terms." Vasquez smiled. "Admiral, may I present Harper Oakes, the architect of our liberation?" Harper stepped forward and saluted. Voss's eyes narrowed as she noticed the surgical scars on Harper's throat. "They took your voice?" Harper nodded and made a series of quick gestures that Vasquez translated. "She says it was their first mistake of many." Admiral Voss's expression hardened. "And who's responsible for this atrocity?" Senior xenobiologist Vexara Thun, Vasquez indicated the Kalthari researcher who stood between two armed human guards. Their lead scientist. Voss approached Vexara slowly. Though the Admiral stood a head shorter than the alien, the power imbalance was unmistakable. In 17 years of space exploration, Dr. Thun, humanity has encountered 32 sentient species. We have had territorial disputes with 11, trade agreements with 26, and cultural exchanges with all but 3. Her voice remained eerily calm. "Do you know how many have taken our people for experimental subjects?" Vexara's respiratory flaps quivered slightly. "Admiral, our intelligence suggested." "None," Voss interrupted. "Because most species are smart enough to recognize that such actions typically end poorly for the perpetrators." Commander Trell stepped forward, his military bearing reasserting itself. "Admiral Voss, the Kalthari hegemony does not recognize Earth's jurisdiction in this sector. These humans were collected following hostile actions against our outposts." "Collected?" Voss repeated, her tone dripping with dangerous sarcasm. "What an interesting term for kidnapping and mutilation." Harper tapped Vasquez's shoulder and signed rapidly. "Harper says they believed our colony ships destroyed their outpost near Proxima Centauri," Vasquez translated. But according to their own research data, which he accessed during the takeover, the outpost was hit by a rogue asteroid, not human weapons. Vexara's 4 eyes blinked in rapid succession. "That's classified information." Harper smiled and pointed to her eyes, then her brain, then mimicked typing. "She memorized your access codes," Vasquez explained unnecessarily. "Turns out when you take someone's voice, they develop other skills, like perfect recall." "Impossible," Vexara protested. "Those sequences are 72 characters long and change daily." Harper shrugged and made a show of examining her fingernails. Admiral Voss suppressed what might have been an admiring smile. "Dr. Thun, Commander Trell, we have much to discuss regarding reparations and the immediate release of any remaining human captives. But first," she turned to Harper. "Ms. Oakes, I understand if you want to return home immediately. We have medical facilities aboard the Mercy that can begin surgical assessment of your vocal condition." Harper shook her head firmly and signed again. Vasquez hesitated before translating. She says, "With respect, Admiral, she's not finished here yet." "Explain," Voss demanded. Harper gestured toward Vexara, then to herself, then mimicked writing. "I believe," Vasquez interpreted cautiously, "she wants to continue the conversation with Dr. Thune. On her terms." Admiral Voss considered this for a long moment. "Very well. Captain Vasquez, secure the station and prepare the other captives for evacuation. I will accompany Commander Trell to the Retribution to begin diplomatic discussions." Her gaze shifted between Harper and Vexara. "You have 1 standard hour, MS Oaks. Use it wisely." After the others departed, Harper led Vexara to a small conference room overlooking the stars. The Kalthari researcher moved stiffly, aware that the balance of power had completely reversed. "I suppose you intend some form of personal retribution," Vexara said, settling her elongated frame into a chair designed for her species. "I would understand such a reaction, though I hope you will recognize I was conducting research, not acting from malice." Harper removed a tablet from her pocket, Kalthari technology, and began typing. The words appeared on the wall screen in both English and the flowing script of Kalthari language. "Does that distinction matter to your test subjects?" Vexara tilted her head. "Of course it matters. Scientific advancement requires." Harper interrupted with more typing. "You took 23 humans, each with families, careers, dreams. You categorized us as specimens. Your species attacked us first," Vexara insisted, repeating Trell's earlier claim. Harper's fingers flew across the screen. "Your own data proves that false, yet you continued experiments after learning the truth." For the first time, Vexara's composure cracked. The research was producing valuable results. On human resilience? Or Kalthari cruelty? "That's unfair. We treated you humanely within experimental parameters." Harper stood suddenly, slamming her hand against the table. Then, with deliberate slowness, she typed a new message. "You stole my voice." Vexara's eyes lowered. "Yes, that was perhaps unnecessary." Harper typed again. "Yet here we are, still communicating. Your hypothesis was fundamentally flawed." Evidently, Vexara acknowledged. "Your adaptability exceeds anything in our xenobiological models. Most species rely primarily on a single communication method. When deprived of it, cognitive function typically declines rapidly." Harper's next message appeared more slowly, thoughtfully. "Humans developed multiple communication systems precisely because we are vulnerable as individuals. Our strength comes from connection." "Fascinating," Vexara murmured, scientific curiosity temporarily overriding her precarious situation. "So your redundant systems evolved from weakness, not strength?" "From necessity," Harper typed, "and compassion. Sign language wasn't created for captives to secretly communicate. It was developed so those born without hearing or speech could fully participate in society." Vexara processed this information slowly. "But your species creates accommodations for genetic aberrations?" Harper's expression darkened as she typed furiously. "Not aberrations. People. Different, not lesser." "Your fundamental error wasn't scientific, Dr. Thune. It was philosophical." "Meaning?" "Meaning? You saw difference as hierarchy, stronger versus weaker. That's why you failed to anticipate our response." Vexara leaned forward. "And what is the correct framework?" "Diversity as adaptive advantage," Harper typed, "and every difference is potentially valuable in the right context." The Kalthari scientist fell silent, genuinely considering Harper's words. After several minutes, she asked, "What happens now?" "Your admiral seems intent on significant penalties for our actions." Harper nodded and typed, "Justice is appropriate. But between species, it must be tempered with understanding." "You are advocating for leniency? After what we did to you?" "I'm advocating for something more valuable, knowledge exchange." Vexara's respiratory flaps fluttered in surprise. You would share information with us? Voluntarily? Harper's fingers danced across the screen. My field is systems engineering. Your atmospheric processors are remarkable, but inefficient. I could improve their function by 47% with minimal modifications. Why would you help us? Because that's who we are, Harper typed. Humans don't just survive. We connect, we improve, we transform. Even with those who harmed you? Especially then. It's easy to help friends. The test of civilization is how we treat adversaries. Vexara stared at the human with newfound respect. You are not what I expected. Harper smiled slightly and typed, that seems to be humanity's speciality. Before your admiral returns, Vexara said hesitantly, may I ask one personal question? Harper nodded. Are you not angry? About your voice? Harper considered this, then typed carefully. Anger is natural. Letting it define me would validate your hypothesis that humans are ruled by emotion, not reason. And are you? Ruled by emotion? We are guided by both, Harper responded. Another adaptive advantage. Emotion gives us purpose. Reason gives us direction. The door slid open, revealing Admiral Voss. Time's up, MS. Oaks. Harper stood and gave Vexara one final, measuring look. The Earth delegation has requested your expertise during negotiations, Voss told Vexara. Apparently, MS. Oaks suggested you have valuable perspectives to offer. Vexara's surprise was evident. She advocated for my inclusion? Against my better judgment, Voss confirmed dryly. But I have learned to trust Harper's assessments. Something about her seeing patterns others miss. As they walked toward the diplomatic chamber, Vexara found her scientific mind cataloging everything she'd learned about humans, not as specimens now, but as equal intellects worthy of study and collaboration. Admiral, she ventured, what will happen to your people who lost their voices? Can your medicine restore them? Voss's expression remained neutral. Our medical technology is advanced, but the neural damage from your inhibitors presents challenges. Perhaps, Vexara hesitated, perhaps Kalthari and human medical knowledge combined might develop solutions neither could create alone. Voss raised an eyebrow. Are you offering research cooperation, Doctor? And with appropriate ethical oversight, Vexara qualified quickly, and only with fully informed consent from any participants. We will add it to the discussion topics. The diplomatic chamber was crowded with representatives from both species. Commander Trell stood with several Kalthari officials who had arrived on their own vessels, while human diplomats from the Mercy clustered around a holographic display. Harper sat beside Captain Vasquez, her tablet connected to the central communication system. As Vexara entered, Harper nodded acknowledgement, not friendly, but without hostility. We are prepared to discuss terms, announced the Kalthari diplomat Juros Malk. However, we maintain that our research initiatives were justified given the perceived threat. Harper's text appeared on the main screen. Perception can be corrected with data. I have transmitted files proving no human involvement in your outpost destruction. Malk blinked rapidly. These files require verification. Already confirmed by your own science vessel Tarkath, Admiral Voss countered. The debris pattern matched astronomical impact, not weapons signatures. Commander Trell shifted uncomfortably. If this is accurate, then our response was disproportionate. A diplomatic way of saying horrifically wrong, Vasquez muttered. Harper typed again, looking backward assigns blame. Looking forward creates solutions. Well said, Malk acknowledged with surprising grace. What does Earth propose? Admiral Voss outlined terms, immediate release of all human captives, reparations for affected families, full disclosure of all research conducted, and an exchange of ambassadors to prevent future misunderstandings. Additionally, Voss concluded, we propose a joint medical initiative to repair the damage inflicted on our people. Malk glanced at Trell. This is acceptable, with conditions regarding military restrictions near our territories. As negotiations continued, Vexara found herself watching Harper, how the voiceless human somehow commanded attention without speaking, how her written words carried weight beyond their digital form. During a brief recess, Vexara approached Harper. "Researcher Oakes," she began formally, "I have been authorized to offer you a position on the proposed medical initiative. Your unique perspective would be invaluable." Harper raised an eyebrow and typed, "As researcher or subject?" "Researcher, of course," Vexara replied quickly, "with authority equal to my own." Harper considered this, then typed, "I need to go home first. See my family. Decide if my future lies in diplomacy or engineering, or xenobiology," Vexara suggested. Harper's smile held a hint of irony as she typed, "I have certainly gained unique insights into interspecies relations." "Indeed." Vexara hesitated, then added, "Whatever you decide, I hope our conversations continue. You have changed my understanding of communication itself." Harper nodded and typed one final message before returning to the negotiations. "That's the power of connection, Dr. Thune. It transforms both parties." 3 months later, on Earth, Harper stood before the United Nations Security Council, her presentation concluding to thunderous applause. Though she still couldn't speak, her movements were confident and precise, her signed statements translated simultaneously for the assembly. Admiral Voss joined her at the podium. "Dr. Oakes has demonstrated extraordinary courage and vision. The Kalthari human medical exchange she proposed has already developed promising neural regeneration techniques. More importantly, her actions have transformed a potential interstellar war into a productive alliance." In the diplomatic gallery, Vexara Thune watched with four-eyed intensity. The Kalthari scientist had spent weeks on Earth, learning human customs, studying their adaptations, and marveling at their resilience. After the ceremony, Harper approached her former captor. Their relationship remained complex, not friendship exactly, but something equally rare, mutual respect born from adversity. "The Council approved your proposal," Vexara said. "The joint research facility will be constructed in neutral space, with equal representation from both species." Harper nodded and typed on her ever-present tablet. "And the other provision?" "Yes. All research subjects must be volunteers, and all protocols require unanimous ethical approval." Vexara's breathing flaps fluttered in what Harper had learned was amusement. "Your Admiral Voss was quite insistent." Harper smiled and typed, "She's protective? With good reason. Your species is far more formidable than we initially assessed." Harper's fingers hovered over the screen momentarily. "Not because we are stronger or smarter." "No," Vexara agreed. "Because you connect. Even when silenced, even when hurt, you find ways to bridge differences." Harper nodded and typed her final thought. "They took my voice, but they couldn't take my message." As they walked together toward the future they had forged, so different from what either had imagined, Vexara reflected on the greatest lesson she had learned from human specimen H771, now Dr. Harper Oakes, respected xenobiologist and diplomat. True communication transcended sound, transcended species, transcended conflict. It resided not in the means of expression, but in the determination to be understood. They had taken her voice, believing it would silence her. Instead, she had spoken through actions that echoed across the stars. And in that eloquent silence, she had taught even her captors how to truly listen.